In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Marianne's guests are leaders in their field, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in their own work. They teach others to develop, refocus, and grow. Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. And remember, make every moment count.
Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited to be spending this time here with you today. We've got quite a show lined up. Our first guest, Dr. Theresa Nicassio, is here today to talk to us about loving the unlovable. I wonder what this is going to be about. So welcome to the show, Dr. Theresa.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. I know we've been kind of connected through social media of all things, and it's so great to put this connection together. And gosh, I love your message. You do such amazing things.
No, thank you. It's been quite an interesting journey because where I am now, if you had asked me even 5 years ago that I would be doing the kinds of things I'm doing, I would laugh at you. To give you an idea, I've always avoided the public speaking in my past life and travel and the media. So just put that together. And also I never liked cooking, so I ended up writing a cookbook that won all those awards. So it's just, and my husband and I just kind of shake our heads like, what's going on? But you know what? When you say yes to spirit, then anything's possible.
Well, I also know that you're a kindness and anti-bullying advocate. I think now more than ever, we can really use people like you. And so I think it really ties in also to loving the unlovable. But I've got to ask you, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, ever since we were kids, you hear people say, the people who need love the most are the ones that are the most unlovable, right? We've all heard, I think you've probably heard that growing up at some point. But in practice, the reality is that when people are hard to love, they often don't get the love because they're hard to love. And so it creates this a bit of a feedback loop, which is pretty negative. And the other thing of it is that there's, we're all different. And some people come to the planet and to the table with different privileges, and we think about privileges often in terms of financial, socioeconomic kinds of things. Sometimes we think about in terms of intelligence, but we oftentimes don't realize that one of the greatest privileges we can have is our mental health. And when we're mentally healthy, actually, we tend to be more lovable. And when we don't have as much mental health capacities, or maybe we're lacking in our cognitive capacities in obvious or less than obvious ways, we're less likely to have those social skills, those nonverbal skills that make it easy to be around us. So what happens is it starts early. It starts right on the playground, so, if not sooner. That there's some kids that aren't invited into the in crowd. Some kids aren't invited into the playground games. Maybe they're awkward and they go and they kick stones, or they mumble to themselves, or they make weird faces, or maybe they're even say nasty things. And so very rapidly, certain children decide, okay, well, we're not going to play with you because you're not fun, you're weird. And then over time, those individuals who are kind of set aside, and of course the single biggest form of bullying is exclusion, so they get excluded, even if it's not ill-intended, they get excluded because they're not easy to be around, and they come to believe that they aren't worthy of love, and it creates a whole kind of snowball effect of inner beliefs, and then sometimes it even makes their behaviors worse because what do they have to lose because they're already kind of ostracized in society. So then it then goes into then they're not invited to birthday parties or other social gatherings. And even as adults, there's some people who are just not invited to the party, aren't invited to the table. so it's a huge issue that's just the beginning part of it, but that's kind of a good introduction to show how it very naturally and organically can develop the unintentional bullying. It just evolves sometimes.
And I agree with you 100%. It seems like the bullying then changes from when you're a child to, well, that person's kind of weird, we're not going to talk to them, to as you're an adult being excluded from events and different gatherings that maybe other people they know are going to. And I think we're at a place now in society where, excluding people really isn't something that's acceptable anymore.
Marianne, I'm not sure I believe that. I think that there are pockets, and I think you and I are in those pockets where we very much feel that way. But actually, I think that what's happening, with the recent kind of political kind of differences, in many people's corners, it's becoming even more accepted, and that's part of why I'm feeling even more of an urge to talk about it, because people have different political views, and I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but you just look at social media and the news and what we're seeing, how many people are cutting off from those who don't agree with their maybe political perspective and becoming very emotional about it. I cannot even tell you how many people I've spoken with where their family is now fractioned, or friends that they've had since childhood they no longer really want to connect with because they found out that the other person voted or would have voted in a way that they don't believe is right. So I think there's a split going on, Marianne, and I think you're right, and I think that we've got something else going on that I want to stop that train before it gets out of control, because it's that fractioning is, it separates us not just from each other, but ultimately it really separates us from ourselves when we are unable to move to that place of greater acceptance and tolerance and have conversations around the depths of our relationship, as well as acknowledging our differences.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think now's a great time to put the spotlight on these kind of differences and look at what this is doing to our society. So what do you think the social, emotional, and political impact of this type of exclusion is?
Yeah. Well, it is huge. Now, this is something I have been talking about in a really kind of sneaky way. With my book, Yum, I talk a lot. It is a cookbook on the surface, but under the skin of it, it's really a very socio-political and psychologically grounded piece that is encouraging people to accept themselves and each other more, with our imperfections, with our differences, and so forth, but also bringing that level of kindness to the conversation. But I've used food and delicious food as a metaphor, and I've highlighted and focused on people with special dietary needs. That's just one form of a special need, but it still is it's kind of a relatively benign or less threatening conversation to have. If someone is allergic or they have celiac disease or they have food sensitivities, we can externalize that a bit and then talk about what that's like, both for people who, it brings up their anxiety because this other person's different or has different needs and they don't want to mess things up or hurt them. So that's one reason to exclude around food. But also sometimes people think, they're just making that up. It's just a fad, or they could probably have some. They just are overreacting kind of thing. But also what it's really brought forward, and where I've done a fair bit of speaking about, is for those who are living with this difference, where they live with fear around food and uncertainty, and also dealing with some of that sense of social isolation that sometimes comes from the external, by not being invited because they're sort of difficult guests to have to the party, but then also due to internal choices, because sometimes it's really hard to be somewhere and then not be able to eat the food and be singled out and it's different, and so a lot of times people socially isolate themselves, and so it becomes yet again another form of a snowball effect of feeling isolated, feeling disconnected, feeling lonely, and so those are important pieces. But then when it goes to that political and where I'm saying, hey. One of my agendas here with this book is I don't care if you have dietary challenges, whether you have diabetes or heart disease or celiac disease or allergies, which I'm attending to all of those things in the book. That's it's fine. This book is going to help you if you do, but I'm actually pushing it to that next level of saying I want you to learn and have a resource so that you can be more loving, you can be more inclusive. When you invite people over. Because when we invite people to share food with us, that is actually in our society one of the primary ways that we communicate without saying it. But we communicate that someone matters and that they're included. Let's break bread together is the idea, right? So by using food as the medium which we all need to eat, it's very accessible. It's kind of a sneaky way I'm doing to turn this around. But it really, and then so when I do the conversations, then it really extends to bigger issues around people who children as well as adults with learning disabilities or, like I said, nonverbal, social skills, mental health problems, and then we can get into, as we're talking today, about some of the more serious mental health problems that make it so that some individuals are really hard to be around.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So if someone says or does hurtful things or is inappropriate or awkward, why is kindness and including them still important?
Yeah, this is really an important question, and I'm gonna end up talking in both sides of my mouth, Marianne. Just so you're forewarned, because
okay.
Because overall, I think it is, and so I want to start with that place of compassion, because when people are socially inappropriate or say hurtful things, particularly with some of the more severe psychopathologies that people can suffer from, and you hear words thrown around, narcissistic, borderline. You hear a lot of these kinds of words thrown around a lot, and I don't want to focus on that per se. But when there are those kinds of personality disorders that you can see, actually, usually that develops out of trauma. Complex trauma, what they found even with children who have been exposed to certain kinds of trauma from a young age, and sometimes the trauma is sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. What they've actually found on a brain level is actually the left hemisphere of the brain, as well as the corpus callosum of the brain, can be as much as a third smaller. It can be like 30% smaller than in children who are not exposed to that trauma. And then there's other parts of the brain that also seem to be impacted by trauma of all sorts. And so what happens is then, as those areas that are impacted result in the person having a harder time to function, oftentimes having attachment disorders. So they want to be connected, because we all want to be connected, but their resources for coping with life, for self-regulating, for connection gets impaired, and then they end up like thrashing around and doing really, really foolish things and mean things just to get that sense of engagement. So if we can have that depth of compassion and realize this person is really misbehaving, this person is really not being kind, but it's because they really don't feel lovable, or they're terrified that they don't have connection, that the more you can stay self-regulated, doesn't mean you get sucked into their game. And that's a whole other thing. I have some very, very practical tips for how to take care of yourself, even when people are, really nasty and misbehaving. That ideally, this is the idea. The idea that I wanting to communicate is that the more we can self-regulate ourselves and be clear about who we are, where we begin and end, and where they begin and end, and look at them with that from a heart of kindness, as opposed to reactivity in believing that what they're saying and doing is actually, who they are, but realizing there's something deeper within them that's much more beautiful, and but they just don't know how to access it, and so they're really really thrashing around. When you have that different mindset and you don't get engaged, you find yourself, you don't get triggered in the same way, and you stay more comfortable, and you can continue to be loving and just hold that loving space.
Well, and I think with all that in mind, too, it kind of leads me to my next question. Are there any times when it's okay not to be inclusive?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm talking on the other side of my mouth then. I'm glad you asked that, because it's if you're getting harmed, and we're talking if you're getting physically harmed, if you're being emotionally harmed, and you're not able, just because of your own limitations, to stay in that place of kindness and in a way that ultimately is meaning you're not being hurt, you got to get out of there. You have to. So self-defense. It's really about self-defense. I used actually to teach self-defense for women years ago, back when I was a graduate student at university back east. But if there's any risk of you being harmed, or you don't have the capacity yet to hold that place of compassion fully, then you need to do what you can to take care of yourself. So this is also more of a self-care as opposed to lashing back strategy. You do what you need to do to care for yourself and get to safety. And so, let's say you're in a relationship with someone who is abusive and makes you feel like you are, just squashed down. That is not a healthy relationship to stay in, and you do not owe it to that person to stay in a partnership with them. And there's a lot of people who will try and they hope that the person's going to be doing better. And again, with some mental health problems, a person can feel sad or feel bad, or at least act like they feel bad because they don't want to lose you, and then they say and do all the right things to get you to believe that they've changed, and then the person keeps coming back over and over and over again. And there was that book, Women Who Love Too Much, right, is a good example of that's a situation where it's not adaptive for anybody. And actually, if you do continue to be inclusive and pander, and I'm not suggesting pandering in the other cases either, but if it ends up being where it feels like that, or you're doing things for this other person and martyring yourself, that's totally not cool. And so that's a situation where, again, you need to take care of yourself and do what you need to do to get to safety, because you don't want to reinforce, you don't want to what's the word,
codependent, or
exactly, and we codependent on this. So let's say the person is a really nice person, but then they drink, and when they drink, they get mean and nasty. Well,
they're not so nice, yeah.
No, you don't stick around, but you can still have ways to communicate in that situation. Let's say because that the person has had such a hard time coping in life that they, many people who use substances, whether it's alcohol or other drugs, it's because they're very sensitive, and or they're really desperate in not knowing how to be in the world and connecting with others and with themselves and each other. And so, escapism or changing their inner state through these substances is what they feel is the only resource. Well, they can get help. If they're unable to get help, you can't fix them. And that's the other part that gets into some of the important things, is to realize you can't fix the person, so you can acknowledge them still from a place of kindness, not necessarily in the middle of them being drunk and being crazy, but you just communicate, I care deeply about you, and when you drink and when you say these things, it really hurts me, and it hurts me so much that I cannot stay with you, I can't be with you. Or if it's not your partner, but it's just someone who comes to the party, who you invite to your gathering, and they come and they're really inappropriate. They're hurting people. You can just say, it's really not okay that you're doing this, and you're not in a place to be able to be with people right now. And as much as I care about you, I'm going to have to ask that you not be here at this gathering, because you need to get some help, and once you're able to, if they are able to shift things around in that case, you say, you're always welcome, but there's certain boundaries, there's certain conditions that that we of kindness for each other that we have as the norm, and when you're not able to maintain that, then we need to, we have to figure out something else at this time.
Well, and I think it's important. I mean, you are a registered psychologist, and I think it's important to get help from great, doctors such as yourself. There's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If someone feels that they're being, being abused, they can definitely reach out there. And I'll go ahead and give the number real quick just because we want to make sure that it's available. We'll give you a website in a minute here too, but it's 800-799-7233. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So, Dr. Theresa, we've talked about that. So what are some easy ways that we can be kind and inclusive without, and we talked about this a little bit, without losing ourselves or our own emotional well-being, putting that at risk?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, and there really are some very simple things, and some I think I came up, I've been developing over time, but some I actually got better at and really appreciated when I had started having, your kids become teens. Because, our teens sometimes it's like, who are you? It's like, you were so sweet. What happened to you? And that's a whole other conversation I can maybe get to if we have time today. But anyway, that's some of what it taught me. It was a great teacher. But one of the first things, and this goes across the board with whether it's your kid, whether it's your partner, whether it's someone at work who you don't, maybe jive with or feel like, you would necessarily want to be your bestie because they really have a hard time being kind and they lash out, or they, get in your space and they make you feel kind of uncomfortable. So the first thing is to just be clear within yourself where you begin and end and where they begin and end, even if the other person is not able to do the same. So if you can do that from that place of confidence and groundedness and kindness and love, that can really go a long way. There's a great example. I went to a conference several years ago, and there was someone who talks a lot about toxic, dealing with toxic people, and then there was another person who's probably the most researched energy healer. She has the best vision of anybody who's ever been studied and who's done healing work. Rose Ambrier, she's amazing. Anyway, they both were at the same talk, but at the same conference, and one was talking about dealing with toxic people, and it was another mental health professional, and I was so excited to see them speak because they've got some visibility out there, and one of the things that they were talking about, they were focusing on setting boundaries between you and the other person, like blocking them from your field, blocking them from your energy because they're toxic, they're nasty people, and that was her focus. It was almost like fear-based and, this blocking business, and we can do that, right? We can do things like that, and sometimes it's useful, but, and then I went to this other talk, but this first one, and there's some other reasons why I had some concerns about this first one, but I won't get into all that. But anyway, I was really struck by that. It just seemed very it was actually very judgmental languaging about people who are more, say, narcissistic, or again, there's different words that she uses. But anyway, and then I went to this other talk with Rose Ambrier, and she was talking about how when you get around someone, and it's the same kind of concept this first one was talking about at one point. Which it's like they want to suck your energy. You just go into, you just like sucking your energy from you. Instead of putting walls up, she said, don't do that. She said, just make your field bigger, and then make it so large that it wraps around them because they clearly are needing the energy. But you're staying clear. You're not giving them anything that you don't. You take care of yourself. It's not like you're filling it with, when you fill yourself with the energy, it's not your energy. It's like you can fill yourself and beyond with this other, and you're just generous with it. And then they get fed. And, it was such a stark contrast at the exact same conference. And I was like, that makes more sense to me because especially as a psychologist, knowing how harmed, impaired, that this is coming out of people getting the energy, not having the skills to be able to refill their gas tank, of not feeling loved, that the more we can be kind and just extend it without losing the sense of who we are, where we begin. And we just kind of put more energy out there, right? And just wrap it up, give it to them. So if they want it, then they can take what they need and, feast on, but it doesn't harm you. So that's like a great example of that.
It's really thinking outside the box when it comes to, including people and your energy and just looking at things a little bit differently than what most people would consider. Because I have heard quite a few people talk about the fear-based, kind of protection, so to speak. But if you're using universal energy and they're getting what they need to get, it could be their higher selves or themselves. I mean, it's just helping that whole thing. So, okay, we're almost.
I have some other tips too, but yeah, I'm not sure how to get on time.
We'll have to do that on another show.
Great.
I've got one more question. Sure. Oh yeah, and I just want to hit all the bases because I know you wrote this amazing book. You talked about it earlier, Yum, Plant-Based Recipes for a Gluten-Free Diet, and it does so much more. So how did you come up with the idea of inclusive cooking as an anti-bullying strategy? I mean, I'm just fascinated with this.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny. Again, I didn't go into this thing planning it. I worked on the book almost 6 years in the creation, and it came out of my own journey of discovering that I was really sick for 12 years before I figured out the food sensitivities was part of it, and then my daughter became vegan, and there's so many factors. One of the factors was actually my daughter. When you're a 12-year-old and then, you decide at 12 that you want to be vegan for humanitarian reasons, and yet you also don't necessarily, you want to fit in with everyone else. And she actually has extremely strong social skills, that she was like living this double life and struggling at times with what to do, and sometimes would just avoid going to, say, social events because she knew there would be food that she wouldn't eat, and she didn't want the awkwardness of that, and didn't want the awkwardness of bringing her own food, or what I'm saying, or even asking for her needs to be met. So that was an interesting thing as a parent. So I think that the parenting part was one part of it. I also, have a lot of context, and again, the whole story's here, but I have a very deep appreciation around special needs. And children with special needs. And I saw a lot of parallels with that, and how the children with special needs, and whether it's, again, more the social ones that we were talking about or dietary, that how the other kids would respond to them. And then I was making a lot of, the dots just started coming together, and I was thinking, I was noticing that, the kids who maybe have these different special needs don't get invited to the parties. Certain kids get invited and some kids don't get invited. And what does that mean? And I was realizing, I'm Italian, so, and you may be too, I don't know what's your name. Food is a place where we connect. And it is, there's a lot of things we can do about anti-bullying, and it's kind of going back to what we were talking about, thinking outside the box, because, one way to deal with someone who's trying to suck your energy is to try to block them, and the other is to love them.
Yeah.
And food is a way that we show that we love people, Well, the best way into someone's heart is through their stomach, the old saying, right? There's a reason for that. and again, that's a whole other, that could be, it's an entire other show, is about their, the emotional relationship with food, and, food, as well as food as medicine. That's a whole different angle. So I was just driving one day. I'd been speaking. I hadn't actually, I was speaking to a group of people, and it just came to me. I was like, inclusivity. This is all about inclusivity, inclusion, and inclusive. It's in using cooking. So inclusive cooking. That's where that came from. And where people were crying and share. Whenever I speak, usually there's at least one or two people who get very deeply moved because I'm speaking about things that no one else has spoken about, and that they feel seen and heard for the first time, and that there's resources that are available that that come from that place of love and understanding, as well as that fact that I'm a chef now, and a gourmet raw food chef and a raw food nutrition educator. I've got some knowledge, so it's like I bring it together, and so they just feel like this sense of relief. And so I was getting that kind of reaction. It was really the people I was working with, as well as being a parent, and then as well as living, where I suddenly had I realized after 12 years that I couldn't eat certain foods and that they made me very, very, very ill, and where I had to start advocating for myself and dealing with the discomfort of asking to have my needs met if I was going to be with people, or finding ways to do that so that I would be less likely to be harmed. So from the inside, from a less fear-based, but from an understanding-based, a compassion-based, I was like, I've got something to offer here that no one else is talking about, and that's where it came from.
Mm-hmm. What a beautiful story. Thank you so much, Dr. Theresa, for taking the time to be on the show with us today. I mean, it's just been so much fun, and I love your show. You've got an amazing show. So we definitely want our listeners to go to your website and visit TheresaNicassio.com, and then and sign up for your newsletter and all that great stuff. But thank you for taking the time to be with us here.
Well, Marianne, thank you for inviting me to join and connect with your listeners too. And if your listeners, you are listening and you have any questions for me, feel free to contact me. You can write me an email. You can click my Ask Theresa button. I really am here to help people. I'm really excited to be able to have something to offer.
Well, I'm clicking your Ask Theresa button right now. So
there you go.
On the website, you can ask any question you want. And definitely sign up for Dr. Theresa's newsletter. We're going to pause here for a quick break, and we will be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit JudyGoodman.com. That's JudyGoodman.com. Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited to be introducing Cyndi Dale, and she's here today to talk to us about her new book, Llewellyn's Little Book of Chakras. So welcome to the show, Cyndi.
Thank you. Hi, Marianne. I'm so happy to be here. And we were visiting a little bit before we officially started. My last book is 1,200 pages, so I was really happy to write one that sort of, kind of fits in your pocket pretty much.
Oh, this is a great travel book and a little go-to book that you could take with you anywhere. I mean, it'll fit in a purse and a backpack, all that great stuff. And I enjoyed the information that you had in it on chakras, and I learned some things. And so, gosh, I can't wait to get started. I've got a load of questions here for you. I think the first one we'll kind of start off with is, how did you get involved in writing this book on the Little Book of Chakras?
Well, that's a great question. I've been writing about chakras for years. I didn't grow up thinking I was going to become a chakra queen, but I saw them as a child. I could see energies and colors, and the only thing that ever really labeled what it was I was seeing when I was a child is the word chakras, which are subtle energy centers. And actually, Llewellyn approached me. They had this fantastic idea to develop a series of little books that were, really useful esoteric in nature, but also practical and down to earth. And I was really fortunate to be able to write the first in that series, which is a little book of chakras. Notice it's not a dummy book for chakras, all right?
No, it's
series
not.
Too. No. Yeah. So they have more coming about different topics, which is exciting.
Ooh. Well, we're going to have to stay in touch for those for sure, without a doubt. So, so for our listeners that are kind of new to chakras or maybe going, what the heck are they talking about? What's a chakra? What do they look like, and how many do we have?
Excellent question. Chakras are typically called subtle energy organs or centers. And I like to compare them to our typical standard physical organs. You know where your liver is, you know where your spleen is, those are organs in the body. And chakras really work much the same way. They're also organs, but they're on the subtle realm. I would say probably only 2% of all of reality is actually physical, and that just means measurable. The rest of reality is what typically these days people call subtle. Other words have been used, spiritual, psychic. So they're like psychic energy centers, but there's been some evidence that they actually exist. And, of course, ancients 5,000 years ago understood and knew that we had these other energy centers that go beyond the capacity of the physical organs. Physical organs are mainly going to operate physically, but chakras are going to work in the psychological dimension as well as the physical as well as spiritual dimensions. So they really interconnect us, body, mind, and soul. Number-wise, it depends on who you ask. We typically think of 7 in-body chakras. That means that they're sort of, located in the spine and look like cyclones or whirlpools that eddy in the front and the back. I frequently work with a 12-chakra system, and it really depends on what culture you study. I've seen energy centers, kind of numbered anywhere from 3 primary chakras or energy centers all the way up to the hundreds, to be honest. So I think it all depends on your culture. We typically work with 7 that are inside or located primarily in the body and then emanate out.
Well, I think that makes it a little bit easier if you're starting off with, as opposed to having to focus on a lot of different ones, at least starting with the major chakras.
Yeah.
It's probably a good place to go.
I would never be able to memorize 2,400 chakras. I like 7, 12.
That sounds exhausting, actually.
Yeah, and this is, the 7 in the body are the ones that really have the most to do with our everyday lives. And I really do believe we're spiritual beings, but we really are here to walk inside these bodies. And so it's both comforting and, I think, down to earth to really understand what the 7 in-body chakras are able to afford us.
Okay. So I know in your book you talk about working with our chakras. So how would that look, and why would we do that?
Isn't that a great phrase, working with the chakras? And it makes it sound sort of like an employment process. It's not like you have to, you kind of write a resume to do it. So we are our chakras. They're our organs. And so each of the 7 major chakras is located in a different space or band of energy connected to the body, and they each enable something different in our life. Like the first chakra is in the hip area, and that's all about physicality, safety, security, money, all that kind of stuff. The heart chakra, called the 4th chakra, is in the heart area, and guess what it's about? Relationships and love. The 7th is at the top of the head, and that's about spirituality, and then we have all the chakras in between. So working with your chakras is just a phrase that says these are your organs. You want to know what they do. You can meditate in or through them, pray, use the different tones affiliated with the chakras to clear them and therefore improve the related aspect of your physical health or your psychological functions, or open more spiritually in the way that you want to, or open and access your intuition, because each of the chakras actually brings in different psychic information, and so you can tune in to what's happening in your physical world or in your emotional world or your feelings or happening with other people's feelings. And so working with your chakras is just this overarching phrase to say, hey, they're your energy centers. They will help you physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, with communication, with your sense of vision or purpose, with your connection to a higher spirit. And so learn how to connect with your chakras, how to clear them, and how to direct what you need through them, like your thoughts or your intentions or your prayers, so you can better attract what you want into your life. So there's all kinds of ways to work with your chakras, but that's what we're able to do when we just say, hey, these are my steering wheels. They're like steering wheels of our consciousness. So, go for it. You can't really screw up. They're your organs.
That's a good thing.
I know, because they're mystical. People get a little frightened, I think, like, what if I ask for the wrong thing? Well, your inner self is going to nix that one, right? I was working with a bunch of students years ago when we were working with the first chakra, which is about manifesting physicality. And so during this week, everybody was going to keep a miracle journal and ask, kind of whatever they call greater spirit to clean and clear and activate their first chakra so they could manifest something. And they wrote down what they wanted to manifest or make physical. So this one woman came in and she had written down a red Corvette. And I thought, well, that'd be really cool if she actually got a red Corvette in a week. We did get one, but it was at the beach. And it was about 2 inches. It was red Corvette. But it's a good start, right?
Yeah, well, do you know it? And it just shows you that you need to be a little bit more specific when you make those kind of requests and ask for those kind of things.
Exactly. Sometimes if you ask for a carriage, you might get Cinderella's pumpkin. So work it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that you can do with it. And, I was real impressed with, and we'll get to this later because you talk about the little bit, you touched on manifesting through the chakras, but we'll get to that a little bit later. My next question is, okay, so we can find our chakras with our hand and a pendulum. So how can we use our intuitive gifts to access a chakra?
That's a great question because each chakra actually does have its own style or brand of intuition. So that first chakra in the hips, guess what that does? It alerts you to what's happening physically in your body or in the world. The second chakra, which is in the abdomen, is all about emotion. We keep moving up to just knowing what you know without knowing what you know. The relational chakra is going to really kind of clue you into what healing you need or somebody else needs. And then we get to the ones that are a little bit more vibrant. So the chakra in the throat is about communication. So we can tend to hear guidance, hear our own inner voice or bring through spirits. The energy center in the brow gets pictures. I mean, and you can see pictures in your environment, and get a message from a billboard or a license plate, as well as get images that tell you what to do. And then that seventh chakra gives us a sense of spiritual knowing. You know that one, when you just kind of go, if I were the divine, this is what I would do. And then we'd better do it. So once you learn kind of where the chakras are and what they do, you can actually stay open to any form of guidance because sometimes during the day you may just feel somebody else's emotion. And that's going to help you help the person. Or you might just know something like, this person's not telling the truth. And kind of be able to respond accordingly. Or you could just be driving down the street and thinking of a question and literally there's a billboard, that has the answer on there. In fact, years ago, I was bringing my oldest son to get his first filling, cavity filled, and he did not want to go. He was in a horrible mood, and I was trying to be this good mother. And I told him, he just wasn't having anything. I even said, I remember when I had my first cavity filled, and he goes, you're too old to remember. And he did say that. And so I just prayed. I said, Spirit, God, whatever word people like, I said, you just got to get this kid a message. And out of my mouth suddenly flew the two words, God understands. And Michael, of course, says, no, he doesn't. He doesn't have any teeth. And which I think is pretty smart. Mm-hmm. But this bus pulls up next to us, and there was a church that had sponsored the entire side of the bus with a billboard, and it said, I understand, period. And then underneath it, it said God.
Aww.
There's intuition working in all kinds of different ways.
And it's amazing when you look for it, how it shows up in just ways you wouldn't expect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that is intuition. That's our chakras at play, because they're going to draw to us the type of message, whether it's emotional or knowing or emotional in our heart or a physical sensation in our body or, whatever it might be that's going to get the message across to us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so in your book, you also talk about clearing chakras and healing them. So why would we, first of all, how would we clear them? And why would we need to heal them?
Right. Well, chakras are memory banks. They're organs. And, you could really say that your liver has a record of whatever you've been eating and drinking. Unfortunately, that's what causes cirrhosis, right?
Yeah.
And our chakras are subtle bodies, but they're always bringing in information, and they're sending the information to our brain, and they're receiving information back from our brain and sending it back out into the world. So it's easy to collect lint in a process like that. They've been bringing in information since really actually before we were born. And so we've got a lot of data inside of the chakras that may suit us or may be helping us or actually may be doing just the opposite as well. So that's why we clear, and it can be as easy as just asking your own spirit to clean or clear your chakras. You might visualize, a lot of people use like white light because it does everything. Just sort of imaging white light coming down through your body, through your spine, being spread through the spine, through the chakras. You could focus on one of the chakras and knowing the color of the chakra, send a picture in your mind, the healthiest looking cherry red or bright yellow or whatever the color is going through the chakra, either front to back or back to front. So clearing could be that easy. You can use sound. Each chakra has its own sound, but it's sort of the same reason that every so often we go, I really have to stop eating chocolate cake and just eat healthy for a while. It gets the chakra cleaner and cleansed. But we have to heal them because they really have been collecting information since we were teeny tiny children. And, it's why we go to therapy. At least I go to therapy, right? And is to take a look at.
Well, I think we all, a lot of people can relate. If they don't do that, they've got business coaches or spiritual coaches, which is kind of the same thing.
Got it. Everything just gets gunky and backlogged, and we want to sort more consciously and ask ourselves, in this chakra that's about safety and security, that's first chakra, do I really want to keep on holding my family's belief about money, or do I want to substitute something more self-loving? Or we go to the second chakra, and we might say, do I really want to keep feeling my dad's feelings because I thought unconsciously that would help my family? Or do I want to stop picking up his feelings and everybody else's feelings and just feel my own? So there's a lot of reasons to review what has happened in our chakras so we could bring them up to date so they can better reflect like that self we really are and want to be. And you can ask for help. I'm a big one for asking for guides to help me. Why do I want to do it all myself? I really don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So whatever your belief system is, ask for help within that belief system.
Yeah, I think that's where people kind of get, thrown off in the bushes sometimes because they figure they've got to do it all themselves. One of the things I hear often when people I know that are talking about, protecting themselves and doing that, is that they ask if they have to do it all the time. Is it something that they have to continuously do every day? Do you do it once and it stands? What's the best way to handle that?
That's also a good, all your questions are good questions. You really don't have, it gets too compulsive to constantly be tending to that. You know, and that's a form of being not safe. You do have to assume a level of safety, and you can ask whatever you believe is your guide or God, to help keep you safe. For me, I use a super simple technique. I call it spirit to spirit, and I usually do it just during the morning for myself. It's so simple, it's almost embarrassing. I ask, I affirm my own spirit, which is sort of that greater part of me that just knows everything that's going on. I affirm my helping spirits, all those that are invisible or that I'll even meet during the day, like real people or, pets or whatever. And I want to interact only in the best way with them and the best parts of them. And then I affirm, the greater spirit to just, surround me and help me and guide me and assist me. So I find when I do that in the morning, it's pretty good all day long. I mean, if I need to be aware of something, I honestly, Marianne, I feel it in my body. Like if I trigger, I know it. Right? You kind of feel when you go into shame or an old space, and then I just stop, and I affirm that I'm being protected, while I clean that or work on that. So we're just human. We're just human.
Yeah, and I think it's great to, when you come up against these things, to kind of sit and go, what's this, where is this coming from? Instead of, because a lot of times it can create this fear reaction, and instead of going into the fear, it's really going into the feeling and seeing where it's all coming from.
Right. Exactly. Go into the feeling and really think in that moment, life has really done me a favor. I just didn't know I had this, sort of unzipped zipper. That's all it is. Right? And you kind of want people to tell you, when you get green stuff in your teeth, you don't want to walk around all day or your whole life with green stuff in your teeth. It's great, if life, kind of gives you a hint, about something that could really make your life better, too.
Oh, yeah. And so this gets to my next question. And, you talk in your book, and I was real surprised about this. I'm like, let's check this out. You talk about manifesting through your chakras. So, so I'd love for you to expand on that. And then also, because it seems like it was kind of a new thing. I've never really heard of anyone talk about manifesting through their chakras, and I was really surprised by that.
Oh, isn't that great? Well,
here's
how I define healing and manifesting. To me, really simplistically, healing is letting go of what doesn't work or isn't serving you anymore. But you can't just let go of things, right?
Yeah.
Manifesting
is
drawing to you what you need. So it's sort of like we go through stages where maybe, we let go of some relationships that don't work, but we don't want to sit around lonely inside of our houses. We want to bring to us what we need, and it doesn't have to go in that order. We can open to what we need. I mean, again, each chakra has a specialty. First chakra is really physical. Second chakra is really emotional. So there might be a time when I need emotional support. And I've had experiences where, I even go to the mall and maybe I'm a little down and somebody just says something. And I'm like, wow, what a great attitude, and it helped me emotionally. So manifesting is bringing to us what we need. Sometimes manifesting and healing go hand in hand. Sometimes we have to release to bring something in. Sometimes we bring something in and then we're ready to let go of what's not working. And every so often we can do something I call magnetizing. I don't even remember I put it in this book, but I'm going to put this on us, where we almost it's such a cool process where we get to say, you know what, mostly manifesting does involve a little bit of healing, but maybe sometimes it can be as easy as literally just manifesting what we need before we work through the issues without going into a deep dive, and I call that magnetizing, where we just say, you know what, I'm willing to work through my issues, but I'd really rather just be given what I need. I just want it. I'm just too tired to do the work, and I would just love, $1,000, or I would just, with no cost. So, every so often, I really do get that kind of intuitive plug where I feel like Spirit's saying to me, you can just kind of have what you want, so just let the chakra open to it. And it's like, yay, when it happens that way, too.
Well, imagine that. We can actually have what we want,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and Spirit wants us to have, they want us to feel abundant and have these kind of healthy experiences in all areas of our lives,
Exactly. So that's the manifesting. And sometimes it's easier to manifest if you know more specifically what you need to open through the chakra, which is going to affect the related auric field. It's sort of like a satellite dish then that is very specific about what you need physically versus relationally versus guidance or, whatever it might be that you need.
Well, and then this leads me, and this is kind of off topic for the book, but I'm just so curious as all get out. So, okay, so you've written so many books, you're an intuitive and a healer. Through all the stuff that you see, the people that you see, what do you think is like the number one reason people come to you? I'm sure there's quite a few.
But I'm going to use a big word. There's and there's a subsection. It's really love, and I don't mean romance. Sometimes people ask about that. Typically, there's a way or a place in their life that people are feeling unlovable. From whatever the source might be, it's always about love. And really the trick inside, the deception is at some level they're feeling unworthy. And that might affect them financially. It might affect their relationship with the divine. It might be because of how they were raised. I get a lot of people who had really damaging childhoods, like really sad stories. And so they're coming to me and they go, how come I can't make money, or I can't attract a really healthy relationship, or my health is bad. And I always reassure them that on the physical plane, if you haven't had the experience of receiving care, receiving love, being given the money that you need, having somebody take care of you when you were sick, you don't know in the body how to be loved. So most of my work is to help people get that experience of what it means to be loved in a way that they're missing.
Well, and I can easily see, and that's such a great answer, I can easily see how that would relate, because there's that self-love, loving others, and just how people, how we feel about ourselves reflects in everything in the world.
Absolutely.
And obviously in their chakras too.
Exactly, which is going to hold those programs.
Oh yeah, until those are worked on and removed. It's not, a good thing is that's not the end game. It doesn't like we get damaged and we got to keep all this stuff forever. We can actually clear that and remove it.
Right. Well, the good news on the chakra front, and this is getting a little technical, which I do, but there's an outer rim for the chakras which holds the programs, and those are all the programs about fitting in and survival. But there's an inner wheel. It's like the hole in the donut that I really believe holds all the good stuff. So I do believe deep inside each chakra is the truth, is the knowing, is the place from which we know we're lovable, we're abundant, it's okay to have our feelings. So I think hidden within each chakra, and this is what we're striking open, is the healthy stuff as well. So it's not just programs, right? It's not just skewed information. Yeah, those are all lessons and we can learn from them, but I really do believe that what's true on every level, physical, psychological, and spiritual, is also coded inside of the chakras, just as it is in our soul and our being.
And, I think that's such a refreshing and kind of a relief to hear, because, again, people can go and pick up the book, Llewellyn's Little Book of Chakras, and read that and get some sense on how they can go ahead and maintain their chakras, what's going on, how to heal them. And they can also make an appointment with you. I believe you do consultations, right?
I do. I do classes and consultations. Everything's under my website, which is cindydale.com. And it's spelled a little funny. If you put chakras in Cyndi, right, and Dale, you'll get the right spelling anyway. But it's CYNDI DALE.com.
Well, Cyndi, thank you for taking the time to be on the show with us today. Next time you have another book that comes out, please get in contact with us. We would love to have you on the show again and hear more of, the books and information you have to share.
We will, because I've got some other subtle energy technique books coming out, and clairvoyance and later clairaudience, and I just love talking with you, so I'd be thrilled.
We're going to have lots of fun. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thank you.
And for all of our listeners, I'd like to thank you for tuning in today, and remember, make every moment count.
Join us next time for Moments with Marianne, when host Marianne Pestana brings another inspirational gifted leader to help us grow. Tune in every second Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Moments with Marianne, when the Dream Vision 7 radio network is at 1510 a.m. Boston. Or catch Moments with Marianne every Thursday and Friday at 5 p.m. and 5 a.m. Eastern Time by going to dreamvision7radio.com. To learn how Marianne started her business from the ground up, visit mariannepestana.com. Don't miss this, and remember, make every moment count.